Oh, well, I'm in the studio with Chris and Craig, and they're arguing that the future of the data center is going to be very different from the data center that we see now. It's going to be architecturally different. But also they're saying that you can't get there from here just by making small steps. At some point, you have to do something different. So I'm going to find out a little bit more about what that is. Craig, so you first on this. Now, what are the things that people are doing today which aren't going to be so relevant in the future in the data center?
Ooh, okay, so I think if you look at how customers are trying to make those incremental improvements today, they're making it very much in their own small domain teams. So you're seeing incremental improvements, version upgrades, small cycle upgrades happening in networking. You're seeing storage explore, what does it mean to go to software-defined storage? You're seeing the server guys continue down the path of virtualization and going through the small increments of the version upgrades there.
Yeah.
Everybody's going in their own little directions trying to make those incremental upgrades. But where we think customers really need to sort of pause at this point and say, actually, what happens when we get these guys all together and we get them together with the people that actually consume some of this fabric and actually share an intelligent conversation about how the future would look like. I spend a lot of time, we run these strategic advisory workshops with customers, and honestly it's a day where you put all of those people together in a room. And by far the biggest comment we get back was, we never get to do this, because we're always at the coalface.
But here's the thing, Chris, you answer this from me. That sounds, I mean, I know it's difficult and I know it's pretty difficult. The idea of pushing everyone together in a room and then things begin to change, is that all there is to it? Because surely that at some point there must be something where you have to say, we cannot build in this way anymore.
Well, I think if you don't bring people together, it definitely won't happen. There's the fundamental thing of people have to be in the same room having a conversation.
Once you brought them together,
you've got to have that. But I think people have to share the outcome. They have to be invested in what the outcome is together. You know, if you then go out of that room and everyone goes out and gets rewarded or measured on the thing they've always been measured on, doesn't matter what you talked about in the room, you'll still carry on doing the same things. Yeah. So there's that sort of personal thing about getting everyone together, but then the structural thing of, well, are we all bought into the same vision of what success looks like here? Yeah. If you're not, you're going to continue going back into your little domains, as you said, and just going on as normal.
But there comes a point with the IT department where they then have to say, okay, to realise this vision of what we're doing, we have to strike out in a new direction. Is that true?
I don't know, because that sounds a little bit like revolution. A brand new direction sounds like revolution. I think for most of our customers, it's just about, it's evolutionary steps, but it's at least making sure everything's lined up. And kind of back to your point about what are they not going to be able to do in the future. So just take, I have a customer, traditional manufacturer, makes air compression equipment.
Yeah.
Right, been selling it for years. Has realized actually if we start putting some sensors on this thing and we can get some real-time flow of data about how this thing's operating, we can become very different in the way that we tackle our market, and we can be very different to our customers. Well, he looks back into his IT organization. His IT organization was not set up
to do that,
to become a provider of how do you consume and digest real-time information in the quantities that they're talking about, and start breaking it into the kind of analytical views that they need from it, so that they can get the value out, so that they can go and be different in the market.
Well, this is an interesting, because people talk a lot about the Internet of Things, but they obsess on the sensors, don't they? Yes. Well, what they don't obsess on is what the fundamental impact is going to be. There's going to be an enormous tide of data overwhelming your data center once you become this kind of organization.
Well, it changes everything. I mean, similar example to yours, but in our case, it was air conditioner units. You go around the world and you see all these big air conditioning units on the top of hotel buildings, and none of them have got any intelligence, no sensors, no connectivity, no nothing. And there's companies going and having the same kind of revelation you just described. What if we put a sensor on here? What if we connect it to the internet so that we can, I don't know, see what the weather forecast is going to be, and perhaps predictively do something with the air conditioning system because we know it's going to get hot tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're not an air conditioner manufacturer anymore. You're an energy company.
Well,
right, and the services that you build on that. But
absolutely, we don't make cars anymore, right? We make connected cars.
Absolutely.
We don't build cities. We have smart cities, right?
But
we don't just supply gas and electric. We are managing them under a smart grid. Everything's become connected and smart.
Okay, so now then, back in the real world, back in the
That's
grubby
the real
data
world.
center, where
That's the real world, my friend.
yes, I know but that's kind of like the outcome. So what do we then have to do in the data center to make this possible? How do we have to build a data center differently?
So for me, and I kind of we were talking about it a little bit earlier, basic steps of modernization. I know it sounds like a really rudimentary thing, and okay, why are we wasting airtime on something that's so obvious? But for many of our customers, just being able to turn the conversation with the business that says, okay, so you want to participate in this digital economy, you want to become differentiated, you want IT to power that change. Now let's stop talking about IT as this table stakes cost thing, this budget over there that we just consume every year. Let's have a different conversation that says, I can help you enable that, but you've actually got to invest over here. And let's start talking about IT generating a revenue stream as opposed to IT just being this kind of cost at the bottom line.
But haven't we been going on about that for quite some time now?
Yeah, but
without
have we ever
really
had the compelling
moving the conversation?
But have we ever really had the compelling event? The world that we live in now, if you go back just 5 years ago, just 10 years ago, it wasn't one that was dominated by everything being digitized. It wasn't one where everybody was online all the time. It wasn't one where we had smart cities and connected cars and everybody was carrying a smartphone. It wasn't that. The world's completely, radically changed over the last 5 years, created the compelling environment you need for IT to now step up and be able to play in that.
So your argument is that the data centre's at an inflection point, that now...
I think so.
Now the old way of doing things will survive, but will become less relevant to producing growth and profitability, that sort of thing.
It needs to become, like you've articulated, not just this thing, it's your differentiator. And if you look at what it's enabling, all the new services that we've just been talking about, and you translate that back into how many companies in the G500 existed today compared to 10 years ago, and there's massive turnover. And if you look at the new ones, they're the ones who are embracing that ability to take that data, build services on it, get intelligence from it. Those who embrace that will be the ones who survive, and those that don't, won't.
And if I get it right, so your argument as well is that Convergence, which has been the wave that we've been going through to build these well-adapted big machines to do particular things, highly optimized, to do particular things, that as well is not going to get us all the way there, because that will become extremely wasteful.
I think it will continue to be a part of the answer, because workloads and optimizing systems for workloads will continue to be very much a core part of the answer, but it's not the only answer.
Yeah.
We clearly need to have more granular ways of putting systems together. We clearly need to move into an architecture that can support these massive data pools, that can crunch those data pools in real time. We're going from, make it practical, we're going from an era where we were doing parallel data warehousing to now in-memory scalable analytics. And that's why SAP HANA has been the fastest selling platform for SAP in their history, is because we are now at an inflection point, and your data center is your vehicle to deliver this, from needing to know things overnight to needing to know things now. Because actually now is what's going on.
Well, now is driving the product.
Right,
when
because we're all connected, and it's this constant flex.
And so therefore we are inevitably going to end up with these pools of resource that are combined. They're going to be combined without human intervention.
I don't think that's quite true, because I think that suggests that we all don't have a job in IT.
Well, that was my next question.
There's still intelligence that needs to be put in, and there's a lot of experience in how these things work, right? And you still need to capture that and have that as part of the system. But I don't think the disaggregated pools of resource equates to no human intervention. That's not.
I was at a conference in New York not so long ago. The topic was software-defined networking, and by far the room that had the biggest groundswell of people was the one that was entitled "Does software-defined networking make my job irrelevant?"
Right.
Because people are concerned about that point, right? If we take out human middleware, if we replace it with APIs, if we make workloads programmable, what do I do in this ecosystem?
What does human middleware do in the future then?
Yeah, well, actually, it goes on to being able to finally realize what IT was all about, which was about delivering value from data, value from code. If I look at a customer, and I sort of look at some of the ones that are maybe a little bit more application and IT centric, the financial services customers. In that sector, they turn around to me as a consulting organisation. They say what we need is the next generation of coders, and we need the next generation of data scientists that can actually get meaningful data from all of this. That's what they need from a consulting engine right now. And the infrastructure consulting that we've been doing in the past, which is consolidation of virtualization, massive consolidation of data centers, massive virtualization to get the, that's table stakes now. That's just stuff we do.
Yeah, it's not something, and it's they can get that from various places. They can get it internally. They can get it.
Yeah.
So when this stuff has value, for the people that are sitting around now and thinking, my career's been quite hard enough already, and now I have to become a data scientist or something like that. And it's, why should I get involved with this? I'm not going to be around in 5 years' time in this job. Should they be really thinking about developing these skills?
I can't see how they can't. I mean, one of the great answers, by the way, in that session was if you joined the IT industry because you thought you were going to just do this one thing for life, you joined the wrong industry, right? So change is part of our DNA, and I think there will be people that are always, okay, I have an invested set of skills, I want to maximize those skills, fine. But actually our industry is driven by change. I don't know many people in the IT industry that don't embrace, adapt, look forward to change. Most of us are gadget freaks, most of us love tech, most of us love the next iteration. That's what we always struggled in the past to do, is to make the business case as to why the business should invest in that next generation, that new modernized platform. And I think because the world's turning on a dime and becoming a digital economy, actually it's IT's chance to step forward and say, what I've been saying for the last 3 or 4 decades, actually now's the time you really need to do this.
So this thing that you're advocating, this change, this evolution that you're advocating, if the IT department manages to put this across to the business, there is a case to be careful what you wish for, because it's going to imply a big change internally for them.
Potentially, but I think it's positive change, right? It's not. It's there's probably no IT guy who will tell you he doesn't have enough work to do, right? That wishes he didn't have more hours in the day.
Yeah.
And if someone came in and said, well, if given the choice, would you spend less of your time on patching machines and configuring and more time on exploring this, interesting new stuff? I don't think there's many people who would turn that down. It's not about stopping work. It's about moving up and doing more valuable and more interesting work. I wouldn't turn that down. I'm not sure many IT guys would.
No, that's right. So it's in our DNA to get up into that interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And so also, if we're going to look ahead into the future, if there's one thing that's in the data center at the moment, the aspect of the job of working into IT at the moment, that's going to cease to exist, and we look back in 5 years' time and think, oh God, remember that. Something you'd be glad to see the back of, what would it be? Who wants to go first? Yeah.
So there is one, but it's kind of out of scope of the data center conversation, really. But it's one I'm passionate about: is cables, right? I don't want to get rid of data center cables. Let's be clear, because that would be disastrous. But cables.
Don't get rid of them just by pulling them out.
No, that's a bad thing too. But charging cables and projection cables and docking cables, and the ability to get rid of all those, I think, is liberating, and can't wait for that to happen.
But it is sort of relevant to what you're saying, because there are everyone who's ever worked in a networking part of a data center has spent their time crawling around on the floor fixing.
So they can probably relate to it.
Doing the cabling, and also it just keeps stuff, because once you've got the cabling in, you don't want to touch it, do you?
That's true.
So,
that's why I heard someone quote once: the last thing to leave the data center or change will be the network switch, because it's got the most cables attached to it, and I don't want to pull them out because I don't know what's going to happen.
So I'll dive in as well.
Yeah.
And just want to qualify your question. So this is no boundaries here. There's no kind of constraint of reality that we have to fix.
I don't set you any boundaries at all.
Well, we've been talking about getting off platforms that have been around for decades now, for years. The mainframes of the world, which still sit there at the core of many customers' environments, and what they do is they keep closed in the ability of that workload to go and participate in a much more open ecosystem. In 5 years, what do I hope? I hope we have open, interoperable standards so that everything can communicate, everything is RESTful, everything is reachable. I think the Redfish announcement was a great example, right, from DTMF. Redfish 1.0 launched in August. First iteration of actually multi-vendors all coming together and saying this should be the RESTful standard for how we connect into data centers. And I think, that kind of, that trajectory of openness, of interoperability, get rid of this kind of closed proprietary stuff. Get stuff, because you're not going to be able to start embracing hybrid IT and moving workloads around and getting the kind of agility that we've been talking about, and if you're not going to be able to move into that open world. So my thing would be, closed proprietary.
So your argument is, in a short term, having proprietary knowledge is good personally, and
it's what we have. Right?
In a bigger sense, in the longer term, it's one of the things that holds us back.
I think so. It holds the industry back. I got customers who can't throw 100,000 developers at a problem, but actually the open community can, and that's what it does. Mm-hmm. And how do I tap into that? Well, I need to be able to move to systems that can embrace that. And if I don't get that talent pool. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks very much, guys. I'll be back in touch with you in 5 years' time, and we'll see how much of this.
We'll see how badly we got it wrong.
Yeah. And if it hasn't come true, then I'll be asking you why.
Okay. All right.
All right, Craig and Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
For having us.